for the organization. But I've been working with NAN for over 13 years. But I grew up in the movement. I'm a daughter of the movement. Movement is like my middle name. And so NAN's virtual huddle is definitely something that is impactful and definitely an influence on my life, as I'm sure it is for so many other young people that are joining us tonight. So we thank you for being engaged, for being active for change, and for being really involved in the change that you want to see in your community. So welcome. Tonight, we will be continuing with our Operation Save Ourselves, our virtual huddle. For those of you who tuned in last week, we were live from the House of Justice. This week, we're all virtual. We're all coming to you all live from our various respective communities, where we are diligently working individually on the ground, working for justice and equality for all who deserve. So give yourselves a hand, fist bump, acknowledgement. We love you. Keep up the good work. And we hope to have a dynamic discussion tonight. I did introduce myself already. I also want to introduce tonight's guest. We have with us our very own Derek Perkinson, our field director for National Action Network. We'll be joined tonight also by Sister Dawn Jones, one of our national board members for National Action Network. And she's also the head of the Political Action Committee for National Action Network. And we also know her as the DJ Car creator, and she's with us tonight, Sister Dawn Jones. And we're also talking about the census 2020. We know that there are so many things going on during this pandemic, but the census, counting the census 2020 is definitely a huge, huge one that's going on in our community. So we want to make sure that we're engaged, involved, and that we're getting the updates as to what is going on with the census 2020 and how we can ensure that we are counted, that our families are counted, and that everyone in our community is being counted. And so we are joined tonight by someone from the National Census Bureau that will be talking to us very shortly. And then also our President and Vice President, Malaysia Freeman and Pinnacle Garcia on deck, NAN Youth Huddle in the house. We also have our advisors on, Sister Patrice Perry, Brother Trayvon Butler, and they will all help lead the discussion tonight. Just want to make sure I'm not missing anyone. Bear with me. Oh, how can I forget? Last but not least, we'll be joined to give us some remarks as well by one of our pioneer activists. She is one of the mothers of the movement, Reverend Mother Magora Kennedy, who is one of our ancient legacy holders, our Stonewall activist veteran, and definitely a mother of the movement, one who has taught us so much in this fight for justice and equality today. And we'll be joined to hear from her as well. All right, let's jump right into it. The census 2020 and voting. How do the two connect? How do they correlate? What do we need to do as a community, as a people, as young people, especially as activists, to stay involved with the census? I did introduce that we had a guest that will be joining us tonight. But before we jump into that, I also want to, of course, we can't start anything without prayer. So I want to have a quick prayer by our advisor, Sister Patrice Perry. Please lead us with a quick prayer to kick us off with tonight's huddle discussion.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. Let us pray. Most gracious and wise God, we first come to tell you thank you for tonight. Thank you, God, for this youth huddle. Thank you, God, for our young people who step up as leaders. Every day they lead this nation. God, we ask you to continue to cover our young people as summer is still here. They're still trying to figure out the learning for them. But God, give them the strength to not get discouraged. Give them the strength to have strong minds and know that, God, you are with them no matter what. Continue to cover the Sharpton family. Continue to cover Reverend Dr. Al Sharpton and the leaders of NAN. We ask this in nothing but your matchless name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Patrice. I also want to take a moment to acknowledge, while we're in our spiritual realm, to acknowledge Michael Brown. Michael Brown, with a moment of silence. He was killed 6 years ago today, on this very day. 6 years ago yesterday. And it has been over 150 days also since the death of Breonna Taylor. And we also know that Breonna was killed in Louisville, Kentucky, and no cops have yet been fired or arrested to this day. So we know, in the memory of Mike Brown, who lost his life 6 years ago yesterday, and in the memory of Breonna Taylor, whose justice we are still seeking to find. We wanted to remind you all that we are committed to the fight for justice, that we are staying with our feet to the ground and our voices to the ground and our ears to the ground as we continue to push for justice and equality for our dear brothers and sisters who are being taken from us shamelessly in our face, in the face of America, in the face of our communities, in the face of our people. And so we want to keep justice reigning for these individuals, justice for Breonna, justice for Michael Brown. And we want to remind you all that on August 28th, on Friday, August 28th, we will continue to make that commitment by joining together and gathering for the Commitment March on the anniversary of the historic March on Washington. On August 28th, we will be going to Washington, D.C. for the Commitment March. Get your knee off our neck. We'll be joining together in the name of Breonna, in the name of Mike Brown, in the name of so many others, that we will continue to fight for justice until we seek the change that we want to see. So I hope that you all are joining us on August 28th. If you need more information or you want to sign up to join us, you can do so at our website at www.nationalactionnetwork.net. Be involved and be engaged, but more so, be counted. And with that said, being counted, we want to talk about the Census 2020. Where are we with the census? First of all, have you filled out the census? Young people, if you're not doing it yourself, have you asked your parents, asked your guardians, asked the people in your community, have you filled out the census, making sure that we are all counted? I want to introduce our New York Field Director, Brother Derek Perkinson. If you're on tonight, help us bring on our special guest, and let's get right into the conversation. Brother Derek, are you on? Brother Derek, you're muted.
I'm sorry. Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Dominique, Ashley, Huddle in the building. Patrice, I am happy to introduce this young woman right here. Her name is Kathleen. She is fantastic. She is lightning in a bottle, and she's impactful. And I reached out to Julie Minna's office, and it's behind my back. And I love Julie, and behind my back. And I asked for a representative from the office, and behind my back, my fingers is crossed. And I said, I hope they send Kathleen. So without further ado, I hope everyone enjoys Kathleen. The floor is yours.
Good evening, Sister Kathleen, and thank you for joining us. Welcome to Huddle.
Thank you. And oh my gosh, I'm glad that you call it Huddle. Anybody that's ever done field work, that's ever knocked the door, knows that we call it Huddle Up. And thank you, my favorite Nubian, Derek, for the tremendous shout out. You are a soldier in the game. You put the O in OG. So I really do appreciate you. I hope y'all don't mind if I just be myself tonight. Can I just, because I'm home, I'm in the COVID situation. My teenagers are fed. So I'm just going to be free. Is that all right?
Yeah, well, let's jump right into it, Sister Kathleen. And
awesome.
You can tell us, of course, you mentioned COVID. We know that the pandemic is definitely, at stake here. So what's going on with the Census 2020? How can we be engaged, involved? What's going on? How are the numbers looking across the United States, especially in New York where we are? And how can we as people of color be engaged in helping the efforts to continue to push for the results that we hope to see for our communities?
Fantastic question, sister. So number one, the census is nothing but your RSVP to what could be and should be the greatest party, the greatest experience in the world. Living in America and living right here in New York City. And y'all are uptown, so you understand we put the flavor in parties, right? So, and we put the jazz in America. Let's just keep it really real about what the experience is. But anyone who's ever planned a party knows you need to tell your host if you're coming. You need to RSVP, otherwise your host is not going to be ready for you. There might not be enough chairs. There might not be enough food, heaven forbid. So your basic needs as a guest will not be met if you don't RSVP. And that's what the census is. It's your RSVP to the experience that you are already at, that you are already living. And sometimes that experience is really rough, particularly for African Americans in this country, right? And that is because when you don't RSVP to the census, they do not know how many hospitals you need in your community. And many of us have to travel miles in an emergency to get to a hospital, right? When you don't RSVP, when the party's hot, we say the roof is on fire. Well, guess what? It's going to burn because FDNY needs to know where to put firehouses, how many ladders and hooks you need, how much staff, And we all know that we don't see everybody socially, right? We don't hang with just anybody. And so you're going to need a bouncer because people are going to try and crash. Well, that's where NYPD comes in, right? And so you're going to need to be safe. You're going to need to be sure that if people come in and they're trying to mess up the party instead of enjoy it, that they can be removed easily and everybody can be safe. We're talking now about a COVID environment. This vaccine doesn't exist yet. How do you think the governor and the mayor have been able to get on television every day and talk about how many respirators they need, how many nurses, how many beds, how many doctors, how much testing, and where to put the testing sites? It's all based on population data that we provide by doing the census. And so when this vaccine comes out, if you want the hood to be good and not have a shortage, because you know if there's a shortage where it's going to be, let's not pretend. Let's just be real. You've got to fill out the census. You've got to answer the roll call. You have got to RSVP because we are not invisible and we do have needs and those needs need to be met. So how are we doing? We are struggling. We have been pushing and fighting, and in the midst of a pandemic, I am very happy to say that we are gaining on the national average. And why does that matter? The national average 10 years ago, we finished 14 percentage points behind. The national average was about 74, and we finished at 61.9%. 14 percentage points behind. And here's why that matters. The census is a race between states, right? So the census is asking how many people in Texas, in Arkansas, in California, in New York, right? It's asking these questions because money, power, and representation are all part of this, right? Money. Our fair share of $1.5 trillion every year is doled out, federal money. And how do we get our share? Now, you know how this was back in the day. The biggest person in the house got the biggest cut, right? They ate first, especially if it was your parents. This is how it happens. The census is the same thing. The biggest states get the most. They get the most representatives in Congress because the number of people in a state directly correlates to the number of representatives you get in Congress. And let me tell you something that's a little bit scary. Back in the 1940s, we had about 50 some odd people, right, that were in Congress coming from New York. Now we're down to 27. And 10 years ago, we lost 2. We are at risk of losing 2 more. And that can't happen. That just cannot happen, right? Also, the number of delegates we get to the Electoral College is directly correlated to the number of people in every state. And that is very scary as well because the Electoral College, I'm a Brooklyn girl, got to quote Biggie, because if you didn't know, now you know about the importance of the Electoral College in naming the president, right? It's not just your popular vote. The Electoral College then comes in and they do their thing, and then we wind up with what their decision is. Real talk now. We got to hear this. This is why it matters. What'd you say, sis?
Remember how Trump got elected?
Indeed. Okay. We cannot forget these things. Now I'm going to move a little bit so I make sure I plug in this computer. It's telling me low battery. So when we look at the census, we've got to look at our own communities. And real talk, a lot of us don't trust the government. So don't. I'm not asking you to. I'm asking you to trust and believe that our communities will be cut short and left out and left lacking as usual, the last, the least, and the left out. And you don't want to continue in that vein, so do the census. Real talk. You don't trust the government, but you fill in your tax return every year and get your money, right? That's all the census is. And it's asking you less stuff about your personal business than the tax man is asking you on the IRS form. So do the census. It is a tax return for your community, for Harlem, for Inwood, for Washington Heights, for Brooklyn, for Crown Heights, for Bed-Stuy. And who were the most historically undercounted? African Americans and foreign-born Black folk. Okay? So you could be African American, you can have Caribbean flavor, you are undercounted. We are being left out. It's time to take some action. And in a pandemic, we have had such a challenge, but I'm happy to say that we're gaining on the national average. We are now 9 percentage points away, not 14, but we are still ranked as New York State 37 of the 50 states. We've got to fill in that census. We still have about 45% of New Yorkers still haven't done the census. And you don't have to be the parent. You don't have to be the head of house. You don't have to be the breadwinner. All you have to be is living in America. I don't care if you documented, undocumented, if you could trace your people back to 1619, when many of the first of us was brought over here, because Ivan Van Sertima told you they came before Columbus, but Derek will talk to you about that. That's a whole other conversation.
Kidnapped over here.
Okay, okay, thank you. So, but that's a whole other forum. We talk about that later. So I don't care if you came in 1619. I don't care if you came in 2019. If you are here, if you've got a cousin that came from vacation and never went back, you had an auntie that was having some challenges and never left your living room, count them. Count everybody, because everybody counts. And every question on that census is hard fought. It was a battle to make sure that we could even be counted as one entire human being. We started off as only 3/5 of a human being. And now only 3/5 of us is even doing the census. That don't make no sense. It doesn't make any sense. And now on top of pushing through this in a pandemic, when we really can't be in contact, we can't be in crowds and canvass in the same way that we would have as we planned to do. Now we've got Washington, who tried a whole farce on saying that immigrants and undocumented should be afraid. There'd be a question about it on the census. That's fake. There's no immigration question on the census. And it doesn't matter, again, if you're documented, undocumented, visiting, got a visa, it doesn't matter. You count. Now, Washington's got a new thing, and they took 31 days off of the life of our campaign. 31 days have just disappeared like that.
Criminal,
and so now,
criminal.
Thank you. It's grand theft census.
They changed the deadline?
They changed the deadline. It was October 31st, as requested by the Federal Census Bureau, and now they're saying September 30th. Grand theft census. Constitutional
aren't we fighting
larceny.
that, Kathleen, aren't we fighting that?
People are already working towards fighting it, but we all know how these things go. We need to be prepared. We need to double down and show America how New York City responds to a challenge. And I'm talking to all of you. Let me make sure I take a good look. All of y'all sitting out there on Facebook Live, pull out those phones. Go to my2020census.gov. It's 10 questions. It'll take you 10 minutes, and it will change the scope of the hood for the next 10 years of our lives. You don't get to do this over till 2030, okay? And don't leave them babies off. If you've got a 5-year-old you don't add, right now, in 10 years, they'll be 15 and a sophomore, junior in high school, never having had the academic support that they needed because you didn't fill in the census so they could get the funding. Because if they're planning for 100 kids.
Let me throw something in there. I'm glad you mentioned that really quick. When I was being taught about this about 3-4 years ago by Lori Favors, right, the attorney, making effort, she said these people are already planning for the 2030 census ahead of time. Yes. They're already planning 10, 20 years ahead of time. This is insane. And we're not even getting on it when it's happening. They're already 10, 20 years planning what they're going to do next in 10 or 20 years. This is insane.
One of our vice president has a question. Vice President Pinnacle Garcia, if you want to come on, how old are you and what's your question?
Hello, everyone. Hello, Kathleen. Thank you for coming here. My name is Huddle. My question is,
you're breaking up, Pinnacle.
what are your strategies to get people out to come and do? You hear me?
I'm not hearing you clear, bro.
My question is, what are your strategies to help people to come out and do the census?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked. Go to our website, nyc.gov/census. Click on Get Involved. Every single day, we do what's called phone banking. Y'all know, because this is NAN. Y'all understand how to take action in the grassroots style. So we have a predictive dialer.
Uh-oh. We may have lost.
Yeah, well, I received a couple of calls already from the census. I've received from Gail Brewer's office, and I was also received from somebody else, Julia Minna's office. So they are actively calling. I do get phone calls. Have any of you out there received any calls on the census? Dawn,
Yeah.
you're on mute.
You're on mute. Dawn is muted.
She's muted, but I'm sure. Dominique, you didn't get any phone calls about the census?
Yes, I've got
You
3.
did. You've gotten 3. Okay, so they're being very thorough with that. I've seen a lot of advertisements. So the city is not slacking on. They're not taking it lightly. So I have to salute them on that. They are pushing forward. They're putting the resources behind it. I know a ton of organizations who got paid for census work, and I see all the commercials that they're doing.
And I have gotten plenty of mailings.
Now, while I have the two of you on, and I don't know, Kathleen may come back, or she got disconnected. I first want to just mention that we want to definitely send our prayers out to our president, Malaysia Freeman. Apparently, she's dealing with a very dire health crisis with food poisoning. We know that is serious, so we want to definitely send our prayers to Malaysia. We hope that you get better. And then also our new national youth director, Tyleek McMillan, who also was supposed to be on tonight from our Washington, D.C. bureau, lost a very close friend of his today. So we want to definitely send our condolences and prayers to Brother Tyleek, and definitely offer you sorry for your loss, condolences for your loss. And you're definitely both in our prayers and in our thoughts. Ms. Dawn, you were saying about the census?
No, I've received numerous mailings, and I was kind of trying to express that at the House of Justice during the month of July.
Yes. Now, I'm glad that you mentioned the mailing component of the census, because this brings me to our next topic of discussion that I kind of wanted to just intertwine in with the census, and that's the question about voting. We heard Sister Kathleen say that the census, of course, moved their date up to September, their deadline up to September for all of us to get our census information in and to be counted. But we know that the election is going to be soon following that date. In November, we do have a presidential election coming up, and we know that there has been some talk about mailing in our ballots this year, or absentee ballots not being absentee ballots anymore, but everyone will have to mail in ballots. The polls could possibly be closed for us to put in or cast our vote in person. Brother Derek, I know you do a lot of work around our voting rights, and also Sister Dawn in your political action work. Can you talk a little bit about that process? What kind of things that we've been hearing, and how should we be engaged and involved? What should we look forward to in terms of voting for this election?
Okay, Derek, you want to go first? Well, what I have to say regarding, we have the voting registration deadline is October 19th, 2020. And I really don't agree with mail-in voting. I prefer to vote on the machine because I want my vote to be counted the evening of the election. If you see a number of elections around the city where they're still counting ballots, I prefer my ballot to be included in. But if there's a way where you totally can't get out to the polls, then you can go on and mail your ballots or do by absentee ballot. We've been in front of the House of Justice on the 1st and the 2nd Saturday of this month. We plan to go to 135th Street on this Saturday. That's one of the busiest train stations. And we plan to be out the whole month of August and maybe into September up until the deadline doing voter registration. People are actually registering. If they're not registering to vote, they're changing their address. So I think it's very important that we get our forms in on time. And I think that we need to have that date back to October 31st for the census. So
now, Sister Dawn, you talked about registration, and if you can give that date again, what's the deadline for registration?
That's October 19th, 2020.
Do you know any information about felons? If you are a felon, if you want to check if you are eligible to vote, what information, how can you find the information? Do you know?
Okay, now our Second Chance Committee, Victor Pate, is the expert on that. But since I am at home, I'm going to go through my papers. And if you just give me a second, I will get that palm card out, because that's something that we give out while we're sitting and doing voter registrations. And I actually have it right here. Can I vote with a criminal record in New York State? You can register to vote if you have a criminal record and have completed any sentences or parole in the past, are currently on probation for a felony or misdemeanor conviction, are currently incarcerated for misdemeanor conviction, or are in jail awaiting trial for any charge, are currently incarcerated for a felony conviction, and have also received a certificate of relief from disability for the specific conviction, and are currently on parole or post-release supervision for a felony conviction and have also received either a New York State conditional pardon, a certificate of good conduct, or a certificate of relief from disability for that specific conviction. And we got this information from the Legal Aid Society and Community Justice Unit. And this is something that we give out when we have our voter registration tables.
All right, that sounds good. Now, I know that you have been one to register probably thousands of people in New York. I mean, you probably single-handedly, every time I see you registering someone else to vote. What would you say to these young people out here who feel like, this election just doesn't speak to them, the candidates don't speak to them, they're just not engaged, they're not interested in voting? What would you say to them, in terms of the significance of why we should definitely make sure that we cast our vote this election?
Well, the way that I look at how important it is to vote is I look at the late John Lewis and how he walked over the Edmund Pettus Bridge and he was beaten for our right to vote. And that is my main reason for getting out to vote. And that's my thing that I try to express to the young people. What our forefathers went through. We're standing on their shoulders and we need to be out here voting. All we have to do is go down.
Hold on one second.
Aquí a reírse. Te dedicas a hablar de lo que necesito o dejo de necesitar. ¡Imbécil! ¡Qué asco que das! ¡Uf! ¡Qué asco que da este cerdo, ¡Qué asco que da este puto cerdo! Empatía no, lo siente hacer empatía.
It's very sad that people
Yes.
this is what people do with their lives. Very, very sad. God bless you. Nonetheless, go ahead, Ms. Dawn.
Well, no, basically what I was stating is what our forefathers went through for our right to vote. This month, August, is the 55th anniversary of the Voting Rights Act of 1965. And I just think it's so important that we get out there and vote. Well, all we have to do sometimes is go downstairs in our buildings, go across the street. Our parents may had to walk miles to the voter registration. I learned that my grandparents actually fed the Freedom Riders and even took people to the polls. But a lot of our young people are so disenfranchised. So that's why I think, that's my way of expressing to our young people the importance of voting. I know a lot of folks came out for Barack Obama. There were lines. You don't see as many, but I still think it's important to vote in each and every election.
I think so too. And of course, if you have questions or comments, feel free to put them in the chat. We apologize for the hacker, but we're not going to allow them to deter our souls or deter our message or deter our mission. So for whatever, backwards never.
That's why we need to vote. That's one reason why we need to vote.
That's right.
Amen. Brother Trayvon, did you have something to add to the discussion of this? I know that you're working with our crisis department, and I know that you're seeing a lot of the felon question. We have voter suppression laws that are still in place in many different states. Did you want to add any to the discussion on voting and why it's important to do so?
Yes. Good evening, everyone. So good to see you all again on Monday. I did want to say, in regards to not just voting, but with the census, that one of the biggest challenges that we will have in our community in terms of getting people to register to vote and to fill out the census is not just, the lack of information, because the information is there, but I think that communication and that trust between the community and the government needs to improve. I think we got to do a better job as a community and kind of, understanding government and kind of working with government to benefit us and to provide us the resources that we need in our community to get the results and the outcomes that we desire for better communities, schools, parks, public transportation, housing, et cetera, and resources so that we can best capitalize on this like other communities across the country.
I want to throw this question out, and this can be for anyone who's listening to us tonight or who's on with us tonight, because we definitely want to have the discussion and open it up for our young people to converse with each other and talk it out. But we hear that the president is thinking of pushing the date for the election back. What do you guys feel about that? Do you feel like he really does have the best interests because of the pandemic to try to keep us safe? Or do you feel like it's a ploy to try to get him for him to try to control the election as much as he can and try to get as many votes on his side as possible?
He legally cannot do that.
Oh yeah.
Well, there you go.
Well, I was gonna say the same thing Patrice said. He doesn't have the power to do it, and
Nope.
like I said before,
That was me, Ashley.
And like I said before in another group chat, I'm not going to give too much energy to that type of request. He doesn't simply have the power to do it. Elections are ran by states. So the fact that he keeps talking and demanding, or asking for the election to be pushed back is no different than me asking or demanding that he leave the White House.
Yeah, that has to go through the state legislator.
Did you say, Ms. Dawn?
It has to go through the state legislator. He can't just change the election day. I mean, I think what he's trying to do is, for himself, in order for himself to get elected, but he cannot go and change an election date. That's something the president doesn't have the power to do that.
All right.
I definitely feel like, sorry, you could go.
Oh, sorry. I just wanted to say real quick that I think this is something that dictators would do. Like they would try to control, the vote and, try to control the government. This is something that dictators would do. So yeah, that's what I have to say.
That's a good point. I definitely feel that same way. I feel like he's trying to monopolize, well, not monopolize, but I feel like he's trying to take over something that he's not able to take over. And I feel like that's why us youth have been rallying to make sure that there are changes not only in elections, but there are changes in our community, such as the census. We are empowering the census. We are empowering voting whenever we march and whenever we speak out to something that we disagree, such as Breonna Taylor's death. It's been too long that she hasn't been gotten justice. Same thing for George Floyd. He needs to get justice, and so does Ahmaud Arbery. So yeah.
Now, young people, anyone who's joining us tonight, I mean, I know that in conversations that I've even had about voting, a lot of my friends are just like not engaged. They're just like, oh, I'll even vote for Kanye before I vote for Joe Biden. I mean, there's just so much going on. How do you guys feel like we can keep, especially young people, involved and engaged in this election? If you don't like the candidates, you don't like the candidate. I mean, but what is it that we can continue to actively do to make sure that we, keep young people engaged in voting in this process and in this, of course, election? Because we know that if we don't come out in the numbers to vote, we know what's going to happen with this election. So how do we what are things that we can do in our own community, in our own conversations even, to keep people engaged and interested in voting? We got to make sure every vote comes in. How do we do that, young people? Speak up. Let's hear some solutions.
Definitely something like this to help not only show the importance of voting, but the impact that it can do. I know that some of you guys in Huddle didn't vote for Trump, but there were a lot of things that could have been prevented from his election. And also we know that Hillary, she wasn't a good option either because of the emails that were sent out. But I feel like where there's a lot of negativity, there were also a lot of positive things that she had that were able to improve our communities and stuff. So I feel like definitely showing the importance of voting, definitely doing talks like this that show the importance of voting in your community that can give you the resources. So yeah.
Anyone else?
Yeah. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, brother.
All right. So I would like to say that, we may have to make it more cool and appealing for the youth. Because when it comes to voting and politics, it's more catered to the older adults. So we have to educate the youth a lot more and, just make it a lot cool and appealing. For an example, my friend Andre Rainey, he's mayor of Peekskill, New York. and he's serving his second term, and he's a rapper. Now, the kids and the youth up in Peekskill, New York, love him. They love him. Why? Because he's cool. He makes things cool. You know, it's popping up there for him. So when it comes to like the youth, we have to like, you know, to like have the youth a lot more engaged. We have to like do like a lot of things reference to like, you know, voting, educating the senses, make it more appealing and make it pop, like in pop culture. Because, you know, a lot of times when the youth are seeing things like on social media, TV, and entertainment, you know, they looking at like, you know, like with Meg Thee Stallion, Cardi B with the WAP and all of that stuff and everything. It's all popping. So, you know, it's drawing like a lot of attention. So we have to like make things a lot more appealing to the youth with politics, just as like with the music and the sexual culture and a whole bunch of other things. Like, for an example, like the reason why like a lot of youth is into like, you know, alcohol and drugs. Why? Because they make it pop throughout the music, throughout the entertainment, the movies, and things that we see visually that's like entertaining and appealing. We have to make politics, you know, the same way.
Yeah, I agree.
I feel like it's, I don't want to be in a position where I say I think we should have it more interesting, because, you know, an election, I shouldn't have to motivate you for something that it's your voice. But at the same time, I think just like a campaign is run, I think with getting people to vote, you got to go out and touch the people. You got to go out on the corner. You got to go out and get to know your neighbors. You got to get to know your community. You got to talk about all the different benefits that comes with voting and participating. People talk about John Lewis and him being the youngest person, you know, to speak at the March on Washington. But one of the simplest things that John Lewis understood is people. Whether he would go to a 7-Eleven or to a Home Depot store and talk to youth and take selfies with, you know, different people and just small conversations and talk about his experience and why it's important to, you know, get out and vote and to go ahead and be yourself. I think we need to treat voting and participation that way as well, instead of trying to create this culture of, well, maybe we should do this and that. Let's just keep it simple. Hey, let's go out, let's get on the corner, let's get some people together and let's talk about this. And not only that, but let's make our voices heard and be a part of this.
Now, somebody asked in the chat, can Kanye definitely run for president? Sister Dawn, can you just answer that? I know that you know the whole process very well. Can you answer if Kanye can be a real serious candidate for this election?
I mean, if he gets enough signatures and gets himself on the ballot, yes.
Explain what that is, because a lot of people don't even know what you're saying.
Yeah, but I don't even know if Kanye West knows about getting himself on the ballot. Okay, basically you got to get petitions, and I would have to look up the number for president. I don't know the number for each office, but you have to get a certain amount of signatures. They have to be valid. They may be challenged. And once he's on the ballot, people can vote for him. And then in addition, people can even write him in. But I'm just hoping that doesn't happen, because we don't want to take away votes and get Trump back in office. So I'm not basically advocating who to vote for, but I just don't want another 4 years of what we've been through under this administration. So that's why I'm not in full support of Kanye West running, but I really don't think he knows the process about getting on the ballot.
Right.
Because it's a very, I've been working on campaigns since Jesse Jackson back in, I think that was 1988, Doug Wilder. And I wasn't even at the paperwork portion. I was out in the street rallying, but I'm in the paperwork in the office, you know, working seasonally in the Board of Elections. And I pretty much know what you have to go through and what they're doing right now. I don't think I've ever seen this before. In different districts where they're counting all these ballots, I mean, people are at work after midnight.
Outrageous.
So, yes. So I that's my whole take on it. I just don't think he knows the process of getting on the ballot.
So Patrice, you had something to add, and then I wanted to acknowledge Minister Stephen Marshall, one of our New York City liaisons, is on as well, if he wanted to add to this discussion, and also Chaplain Cole Napper, head of our LGBTQ committee for the New York City chapter, also wanted to know if she wanted to chime in to give some analysis to the discussion, and also another one of our advisors, Lorianne Lumsby, on as well. Definitely opening up to those three to get involved in the discussion. Patrice, you have
So,
something to add?
so good evening, everyone. You know, I want to touch on a couple of things that was talked about tonight. The first one is the census. I think we need to realize, you know, when I was coming up, it was, oh, don't answer the door, don't tell them people my business. I think we need to realize the effect that it has on the community if we don't really take census seriously. Like, for example, I feel like the census, we did a whole thing here at NAN, but they still came to my house and still had some more questions. So if I wasn't educated on making sure that I answer a few more questions, then we probably would have been miscounted. So even though you do the census online, they may still come to your house. Please let them in, open the door. And she only took like a half a second to ask me like 3 questions. But it's very important. And also the presidency. You know, I think that when you realize that you have a bipolar president, right? Then you have a gentleman like Kanye, you got Nick Cannon, all of those people who these young people look up to for some reason. And then they come out and try to distract you. Like Don just said, you can write his name in, but that's taking votes away from the person that we need to put in office. At the end of the day, the sole goal needs to be that on election day, we need to vote that man out. No matter how you do it, where you do it, whoever you encourage to do it, we have to get this man out. Look at this world. Today they said there was a shooting at the White House. How do we even know that that's true? And he was very mild-tempered about that. It's a distraction. While he's distracting us, he's holding campaign rallies or Twitters or whatever he's doing, his briefings, to talk to his supporters. We cannot get distracted by Kanye. We all know Kanye got issues, right? This is not the first time we've heard of Kanye having issues. Now you're running for president in August? Come on, man. Young people, wake up, get registered. There is no excuse. If you're on social media, I know we've gotten so, stuck on social media that we don't do paper ballots and stuff no more. Get up, get a voter registration, find 5 people in your building. We must mob that place on election day. We have to get that man out of office. We have to.
Right.
And guess what? Just a fact really quickly. 4 million young people, the age of 18 years old, will be eligible to vote on November 3rd. So if you have a young person in your house, 18 years old, make sure that they are registered by the deadline that Ron said, which is October 19th. 4 million young people are new voters for this election. There's no reason why we should have that same man in office. Get on it, young people. Get on it, parents. Get on it, grandparents. Get on it. 4 million of our young people, 18 years old, they will be eligible to vote. There's no excuse that those lines won't be mobbed until 2 days if we have to get that man out of office. Stay focused, don't get distracted, and make sure you're a registered voter. If you're not, get off this website. You shouldn't even be on here. There's too much blood, sweat, and tears on this website for you not to be a registered voter. Thank you, Dominique, and thank you guys for your leadership. Thank you, honey.
All right. Brother Kamani Philpotts, you're on tonight. Wanted to know if you wanted to engage in the discussion. And also, Kamani, Kylie, y'all are on. Y'all want to engage in the discussion? If you don't mind sharing.
I don't mind. You can go first.
Go ahead, Kamani.
All I would say, I saw a shirt that said damaged or deranged. We have a president that is deranged. That means mad. I would rather have a damaged person because we can fix that. But we got to get Trump out of office.
Amen. All right now.
Hello, everyone.
Hi.
So regarding the census, I think that, like you guys were saying before, it's more of the fear keeping us away from participating in it than the actual facts. And I feel like the one way that we can really get people to be engaged in the census is just to make sure that they are aware of what it does for our community and how it helps us to that place for it. For example, it can do many things for our community, and I feel like since it comes every 10 years, it's something that we really need to hit on the ball rolling, because you only have this one chance to make sure that your community gets the amount of income and the amount of attention that it needs. And this is really the only time, to be honest, that the government acknowledges us and really says, okay, we're going to help you out. So we need to take as much, all of that opportunity to use it and to say, we're going to take advantage of what you're doing for us. When you want to do it, we're going to take advantage of that and participate in it. So just keep people aware. And I think that's something that I'm glad that we're doing now, especially to our young people, to tell them that, you know, what is the census? How does it help us? So that's what I think.
All right, Kylie, thank you. Anyone else?
Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
It's Lorianne. Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, hi everyone. I just wanted to briefly touch in because I'm sorry the camera's off right now. I have to brief. I just got trained for the census, so we just finished training. We're going out now. We're coming out because a lot of people don't fill them in. Now I've heard a couple of conversations, a couple of people speak before about why the census is so important, and I just want you to know that they're not asking any personal information about you. They're just asking general information. You understand? Basically is we want to make sure, we want to keep account of the population. I worked at 2010 and I had a blast, and now we're back at 2020 and we're preparing for 2030. Now they're rushing it, so we're under a lot of pressure to try to get everything done by September 30th. I'm not sure if that's going to happen because there's been a lot of glitches in the system and the training. So we're going to see if it all gets sorted out. But for the most part, the census is very important. And we need it because so much is determined by the count, by the population count. For instance, how many representatives are in the Senate, in Congress, how your taxes are sorted out. For instance, they can plan what 2030 is going to be like based upon the information we gather in 2020. You understand? Like they can kind of use statistics and predict. So if you're not even counted, like if you didn't fill out the form and you're not counted, you're not a part of the plan. You understand? Like you really need to be a part of the plan. You got to get involved, kind of like voting. Voting, census, filing taxes should all go together. And I'm gonna just say it like that. I can give you the whole history of the censuses, but I'm not gonna do that. But just know that it's a fun thing. And if you have any questions, you can always call me or call Dom, ask one of them to ask me. I mean, I can give you any information you want. I'm not gonna say everything, but online. But you just know how important it is. Funding for school, everything. Like if you want to know why your school don't have resources, it's probably because you weren't counted. Your kids weren't counted. You understand? It's a lot riding on actually speaking up. And to be honest with you, a lot of people, when you mail in your form, we're not knocking on your door. If we do, it's just to follow up. You know, so you might, if you fill it out, you might get to skip the knock on the door. If you don't fill it out, we definitely knocking on the door. So think about it that way.
All right, thank you. I'm hearing that we do have Mother Kennedy at the House of Justice, and she wanted to address us. We definitely wanted to give her a few moments. We are ending Huddle early tonight, so we definitely want to give her a few moments to address us, but we definitely always want to acknowledge our elder in the house, our Reverend Mother Magora Kennedy. We love you. We thank you for joining us, and good evening.
Good evening. Sorry, miscommunications on my part, because I thought you said you would be back here again. And so I'm here. But anyway, 1, 2, 3. One thing is, like, I've been like busy talking to people about coming and getting on the bus and sending them here. And then also the importance of being on the bus and going to Washington and all that's going on now. So my whole thing is to the young people, to the people that are out there, the struggle continues. It is very, very, very important that you get on the bus and come from wherever you're coming from and be there, because it's the second time around. And, you know, as they say, 3 times and out, anybody's ball game. So to the young people, it is very important, because the first march on Washington, my children were there. This is now the second time around, and we're still going through the same thing. There must be a change, and the only change that's going to come about is if the young people do it. Because we, as the elders, I'm 81, we started it, and y'all young folks finish it.
All right. Thank you so much, Mother Kennedy. As always, we love to have you join us and to talk with talking history. It just means so much to us. So thank you. We love you. Keep
Quick
up the
note.
good work.
One
Thank
quick note.
Yes,
I got contacted from PBS, and I've now I'm in their section of living legends, having been gay rights pioneer. So the picture that we did and the movie Cured, it's coming out on the 25th, and it's going to go virtual like around the country on the West Coast first and then on the East Coast.
Wow.
So that's, that's the contribution. And again, I'm concerned about all of us as people of color, and especially our trans brothers and sisters, everybody. This is not going to stop. We cannot allow this to continue. Everybody better get their souls to the polls on November 3rd and start right now so that we can finish, because this needs to be finished, because we've been going at this struggle a long time. Like from 1619 to now, 401 years. Hey, it's time to wake up. It's our time now.
Thank you so much. Was there someone else that needed to, Stephen, or someone else that wanted to aid to the discussion?
Sure. Real quick, good evening, everybody. I think the question Dominique raised about what can we do about voting, I think for her to have to even raise that question is a concern. Simply because it would almost appear that Black people only get excited about voting when we're in trouble. And so we must look to those to the right and left of us to inspire us. There's never been a celebrity presence to encourage or to push people to vote. You gotta remember those of like John Lewis and others. They didn't have social media and all of these other platforms to inspire, engage, and or force people to vote. We all have somebody that we inspire. And so if 200 of us are on this call tonight and we all have one person we inspire, that's double the amount of people we could get to the polls. And that's what it's going to take. It's going to take grassroots, old school, knocking on doors, texting people, using our platforms to actually engage people to vote. There's no way that we're looking for anybody. I heard Patrice mention Nick Cannon and all these other people. They're not consistent enough. They don't have the same demographics as it relates to economic challenges than the average person in Brooklyn, the Bronx, or Harlem. That means those that we look up to, the leaders on this call, we all have a responsibility to reach 3 to 4 to 5 people. And if we all do that, then I think the inspiration to vote comes alive, not only because we need to get a person out of office. There's a systematic problem beyond the president that we need to address, and it's all attached to voting. And I think we all have the responsibility to inspire those who look up to us, who we mentor, whether it's family, friend, or people that we don't even speak to. This is the time now to check in with the family to make sure we all are part of the process.
Thank you so much, Minister Marshall. I do want to open it up. We do have 4 more minutes left, but I just wanted to iterate a couple of things. So one thing, if you need to sign up for the march, as you heard Mother Kennedy and others talking about getting on the bus, if you are in New York City or you are in a surrounding city and you need information on getting on a bus, you can log onto our website, nationalactionnetwork.net, or you can call 877-626-4651 and get information on how you can get on a bus. Now, if you're in a hotspot area, if you are in a city that is designated as a hotspot, which means that your governor of your state has declared that if you travel outside of your state, you must quarantine for 14 days before interacting with anyone from the community, please understand that we will have organize a march in your city, in your area. If you're coming from a hot spot, you don't have to go anywhere because we're going to have a march and a rally right in your area. And you can log on to nationalactionnetwork.net to find out if you are in a hotspot city and where that march and rally in your city will be taking place. We do not want you coming to DC. We want you to stay in your area and go to the rally in your area. Okay, all that information is on the website, nationalactionnetwork.net. If you can come, we encourage you to come. If you can't come, we encourage you to go to your local rally or March that's in your area. Also want to say happy birthday to our very own Ocean, aka Ocean. Her name is Tylisha McCormick, but we call her Ocean, and her birthday is this week. So we want to say virtually happy birthday, Ocean. We love you. Thank you for being such a dynamic and committed huddler, and we love you. Definitely want to shout out happy birthday to you. Lastly, on the website, there's a group of women who have been encouraging and signing on to encourage Joe Biden to pick a Black woman for his vice president candidate. I want you to log onto the website, look at that open letter. As a Black woman, I'm joining the list. Ashley joined the list. So many of our dynamic leaders have joined the list to sign on to say that Joe Biden needs to pick a vice presidential candidate that is a Black woman. And I definitely want to echo in those sentiments. Log on to look at that letter and what it consists of. Who has anything to say? Closing out 1 minute. If you have something to say in 30 seconds.
Aaliyah just signed on.
Aaliyah.
There's an event that Huddle is a partner on with Copy, the group Copy. Malaysia is also a part of it. Pinnacle is also a part of it. We all are family in the youth advocacy movement. But I put the flyer in the chat. By the way, this is Ashley. Sorry, I couldn't join you guys tonight physically, but I was always here in spirit. I'm always on deck, but I have an emergency tonight. But the information for the basketball event for stopping the violence, increasing the peace, I put it in the chat, and we also posted it on our NAN Youth Huddle Instagram and social media. So please, 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 if you can join us, it's for a great cause. And Aaliyah, if you want to speak about it, because this is your baby, we welcome you to close us out with that information. And of course, VP Pinnacle Garcia can give us the final thoughts. Aaliyah?
All right. She may not be on anymore.
She's on.
Oh, she's on?
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so Ashley basically coming on this Saturday. It's from 12 to 5. There'll basically be like back-to-back games, girls and boys, and it's just to show that we can be peaceful in our community and we can get along. You know, it's not all about the violence, and it's also telling the youth to stop the violence as well. So yeah, everybody just come out, support the young people, watch us play, and yeah.
Thank you, Aaliyah. We definitely support you. We love you, Aaliyah. Thank you for your dynamic leadership and continue the great work. Vice President Pinnacle Garcia.
Thank you everyone for coming tonight. The topic was a great conversation to talk about. Make sure you guys support Aaliyah this Saturday and come support the youth, and make sure that you guys have fun this Saturday. And yes, thank you for coming.
All right. And now we want to,
This is the flyer on the screen. Actually sharing it. The time is from 12 to 5 at Tri-State Park, the corner of 145th and Lenox Avenue. So make sure you guys come out and support NAN and Copy and Aaliyah. So thank you.
All right. Thank y'all for joining us for another virtual huddle. We hope and wish that you and your families stay and remain safe. Get into the action. Log onto that website, www.nationalactionnetwork.net, for all the information of what you've heard tonight. And definitely look forward to you joining us again next Monday, 7:00 p.m. Eastern Time, for another impactful virtual National Action Network Youth Huddle meeting. Thank you to the leadership. Definitely our prayers go out again to Malaysia Freeman, Tyleek McMillan, and also our very own Ashley Sharpton. We're praying for you. We love you. Keep the peace. Ocean, happy birthday. We love y'all. We'll see y'all next week. Thank you for all of our guests that have joined us tonight. Don Jones, our sister from the Census Bureau, Derek Perkison, and so many others. Thank you all. Have a good evening. Be blessed. Stay engaged. Stay active. Peace.
Thank you for having me.
Peace, y'all.